let us start with the very first column. I am sure you can recognize this verb. Pauo, paueis, pauei. Notice that we have the stem that doesn't change all the way throughout. And to that, we have added the personal endings. I stop, you stop, he stops. Pau is telling us that the stopping is taking place. And then we're just telling who is doing the stopping. Yeah, I stop, you stop, he stops, we stop, you stop, they stop. Notice that there is an optional ni, a movable ni, at the end of the word. When this happens, I've made them orange. Yeah? So, this is the present, very straightforward. Now, let us look at a different one. The next one, let's see if you can recognize what it is. Notice that we have added all the way through an epsilon. Epawon, epawes, epawen. This epsilon is telling us that this happened in the past. It's what we call the augment. Notice that after the epsilon, we have the stem just as in the present. It's the same stem. The difference is that now we have a different set of endings. On, es, e, or en, omen, ete, on. That means that this is the, think about it, imperfect. Yes, it is the imperfect. I was stopping, you were stopping, he was stopping, etc. Let's make sure we don't call this the past, because even though it happens in the past, there is another tense that we have learned that happens in the past, and that is the aorist. Now, for the aorist, we have some similarities. Notice that we are putting the augment as well, telling us this is happening in the past. But now, the stem has changed. We have added a sigma at the end. Now, in this case, the sigma is not clashing with any other sounds, so it's staying just there after the pau. Epausa, epausas, epausen, epausamen, epausate, epausan. Notice as well that we have a different set of endings. The alpha is quite telling, except for the third person singular. Just that little element of confusion, but just be aware of it. The thing is, if you read often, which you should be doing, rather than just learning from the tables, you will notice this very quickly, and in the end, actually, not even noticing, it will just be there and it will be fine. You will just be able to translate it. Now, pauo is a regular verb. We do have other words that are, other verbs that are irregular. That means that the stem changes for certain tenses. Let's look at an example in English. For example, the verb start. If you want to make it the past, you will say started. However, the verb teach, you will not say teached unless you are a 4-year-old, perhaps, you will say taught. This is the same in Greek. This doesn't apply to all the tenses. So for the moment, just be aware that some verbs in the aorist are irregular. Let's look at lambano. If you look at the present, it is the same as pauo. You have the stem, and then you have the endings. I take, you take, he takes, we take, you all take, they take. The imperfect, notice, is again the same as lambano. We have an augment, and then we have the set of endings for the imperfect added to a stem that doesn't change, because the imperfect uses the present stem. Where we have a big difference is in the aorist. For the aorist, the stem has changed. Notice, it's not lamban anymore, but lab. Because the stem has changed to lab all the way through, plus the augment, we don't need the sigma marking and the special aorist endings. So we have, and this is probably what has been causing you confusion, we have the same endings, exactly the same endings as in the imperfect. And you will ask, well, how do I know if it's an imperfect or it's an aorist? That's because you will be learning all your irregular stems. Once you know the stem and you learn how to recognize it, you will straight away notice whether the stem is present or the stem is aorist. So to summarize, we have regular verbs like bauo, where to the stem we add a set of endings for the present, and then we add an augment and another set of endings for the imperfect. And then we have the aorist, where we need to change slightly the stem by adding a sigma, add an augment, and then also use a specific set of endings that is different. So you have 3 different ways of working on the stem that we've learned so far. We call these ones, this formation of the aorist, the first aorist, and depending on your book or your teacher, also the weak aorist. It's called first because it's the most common, and it's called weak because the idea is that we need to reinforce it with a special set of endings and by adding the sigma. This contrasts with the second aorist, also called strong. This is a smaller but by no means a negligible amount of verbs that have irregular stems for the aorist. They're also called strong because the aorist stem is telling you what it is, and therefore you can use the same endings that you would use for the imperfect. It is beyond the scope of this tutorial to talk about translation, but I think very quickly it would be a good thing to do, to just think about how we translate these words, because some people think that the first aorist and the second aorist, as in the weak aorist and the strong aorist, are different tenses, or they're translated in different ways. No, they're just different ways of form the exact same thing. Yeah. So I'm going to choose some random words, and I would like you to try and see if you can translate them. Pauomen. We stop, or we are stopping. Epawes. You were stopping. Epausan. They stopped. So we've seen the present, the imperfect, and the aorist. Now let's do the same with lambano. We also have the 3 tenses here. Lambanusin. They take. Elambanon. I was taking. Elaben. He, she, or it took. I hope this is a good introduction. If you have any questions, you can write them down in the comments. I will be releasing other videos moving on to what happens when you add the sigma to stems that end in letters that undergo transformations through the contact, and also some videos to get familiar with the different irregular verbs and seeing them in context, because actually seeing them in context will help you to learn them much more than just looking at lists. So subscribe, follow, and we'll see each other again. A Southeast.